There is a moment just before you were born when your skull was almost too big to make it out alive. Not figuratively, literally. For every human birth in history, there is a real, measurable chance that the size of your head will not fit through the space it needs to pass through. This is not true for almost any other species on Earth. Not for elephants, not for whales, not for gorillas, your closest living relative. Only for you. So, the question is, why would evolution build something so dangerous? The answer is a trade. And once you understand it, you will never look at your own skull the same way again. 3 million years ago, your ancestors had a brain about the size of a chimpanzee's. Small, efficient, built for survival, not reflection. And then, somewhere in the fossil record, something strange happened. The brain started growing, not slowly, not gradually. It tripled in size in a geological blink, one of the fastest organ expansions in the history of life on Earth. Anthropologists call this encephalization, and for decades, the question that obsessed them wasn't how it happened. It was why it was allowed to happen, given what it cost. Here's what it cost. Childbirth for almost every species is simple. A baby is born, and within hours, sometimes minutes, it can walk, see clearly, and find food on its own. A baby giraffe stands within 30 minutes of being born. A baby horse runs within a day. You did none of that. You couldn't lift your own head for months. You couldn't walk for over a year. You were, by every meaningful biological measure, helpless. That helplessness has a name. Researchers call it secondary altrichiality, and it is one of the strangest features of human development in the entire animal kingdom. Human babies are born at an earlier developmental stage than almost any other primate, with brains that are only about 25% of their adult size. A chimpanzee is born with roughly 40% of its adult brain size already developed. You arrived dramatically less finished than your closest relative. Why would evolution build you broken? Anthropologist Sherwood Washburn proposed an answer in the 1960s that still shapes the field today. He called it the obstetric dilemma. As your ancestors' brains grew larger, their skulls needed to grow larger too. But the female pelvis was also under pressure to stay narrow, because narrow hips made bipedal walking more efficient. Two contradictory evolutionary forces pulling in opposite directions on the same structure. There was only one way to resolve the conflict. Birth had to happen earlier, before the skull grew too large to pass through, before the brain finished developing. The trade-off was brutal but effective. You would be born underdeveloped, dangerously vulnerable, and almost entirely dependent on another human being for survival, in exchange for being born at all. This single trade reshaped nearly everything about what it means to be human. Consider what helplessness demands. A human infant that cannot walk, cannot feed itself, and cannot regulate its own body temperature requires near constant care for years. Not days, years. And that requirement didn't just affect mothers. It restructured human society itself. Anthropologist Sarah Hrdy has spent decades studying what she calls cooperative breeding, the theory that human infant helplessness is the evolutionary root of something uniquely human: large-scale cooperation between unrelated individuals. Most primates raise offspring largely alone. Humans, almost uniquely, evolved a system where grandmothers, fathers, siblings, and even unrelated community members participate in raising a single child. Hrdy argues this wasn't a cultural choice. It was a biological necessity, forced into existence by a brain that grew too large too fast. In other words, the cost of your big brain wasn't just paid by your mother during birth. It was paid by your entire species for the rest of human history, in the form of an obligation to cooperate that no other primate shares to the same degree. Now, here is where it gets stranger. A bigger brain doesn't just cost more during birth, it costs more every single day for the rest of your life. Your brain makes up roughly 2% of your total body weight, but it consumes around 20% of your daily energy intake. At rest, doing nothing but existing. No other organ comes close to that ratio. Your brain is, in the most literal sense, the most expensive organ you own, and it bills you constantly whether you're using it or not. Researchers studying human metabolic evolution have proposed something called the expensive tissue hypothesis. The idea that the human gut had to shrink in order to free up enough energy for the brain to grow. Your digestive system is unusually small compared to other primates of similar body size. That shrinking gut is part of the same trade. Less digestive capacity, more cognitive capacity. A direct biological transaction written into your anatomy. So, by now, the picture should be coming into focus. The brain that lets you read this sentence, plan 5 years into the future, recognize your own mortality, and build civilizations. That brain was paid for. Paid for in early, dangerous childbirth. Paid for in a year of total helplessness. Paid for in a smaller gut and a body that needs constant fuel just to keep your mind running. Paid for in a social structure that forced your entire species into deep cooperative dependence on each other permanently. You did not get intelligence for free. Nothing in evolution is free. Every advantage is a transaction, and the price of yours was almost unthinkably high. But here's the part that should genuinely shift how you see your own existence. The same vulnerability that nearly broke your species early on may be the exact reason you're capable of everything you are now. That long, helpless infancy, the one that demanded constant care, constant teaching, constant interaction with other humans, is also the window in which your brain absorbs language, social bonding, and culture. Other primates are born more developed, but they're also born with less room left to learn. Your slow start wasn't a flaw despite your intelligence. It may be the very thing that made your intelligence possible in the first place. The cost and the gift were never separate. They were the same trade. So the next time you do something your brain makes possible, solve a problem, recognize a face in a crowd, imagine a future that hasn't happened yet, remember what that ability actually was, not a gift evolution handed you for free, a debt your ancestors paid, generation after generation, in pain, in vulnerability, in absolute dependence on each other. You are not just intelligent, you are the result of one of the most expensive trades evolution has ever made, and it is still being paid every single day by every single brain that exists because of it, including yours.